If you're a fan of mysteries and you really have to get at the heart of relationships of a whole family, not just between husband and wife, but between children and between the rest of the world around them, then today's book just might be for you. Today I'll be reviewing Apples Never Fall by Liane Moriarty. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today I will be looking at the most recent book, as of now, of Liane Moriarty's. I'm excited because she actually has another book coming out in just a few months, and I very much look forward to reading that one and reviewing that one as well. But this is the one that came out just a few years ago. I believe it came out in 2021. As an interesting little note, at the end, it's pretty obvious that the pandemic had just started as she was finishing to wrap up the book. And so the last few chapters include elements of the pandemic and social distancing and all that. And it's one of the odder elements of her book where you can tell that she was just trying to be a little relevant, but I don't think it was there at the very beginning. But I could be mistaken. Either way, I still think that it's a book worth looking at if you are a fan of Liane Moriarty. Just to give you a quick synopsis, like I said, it deals with a family. If you know anything about Liane Moriarty, all of her books deal with a lot of different relationships, and they try to really get people's thought processes when they are encountering individuals or interacting with their loved ones or new people, or especially people that are on the outside of a group. And she just really works at trying to understand relationships. And I think, and I've said this before, that one of the greatest things she does when she tries to detail the way people are thinking about other people, she does this really good job of giving people's entire thought process. And so you have what you think, and then you have what you actually say in any moment. And I think that that's one of the things that she does really well. And I think it's one of the things that makes her books really interesting to read. Almost all of her books have some kind of dramatic or tragic element at the heart of it, but really you come to these books for so much more than that. And so at the heart of this book would be the Delaney family. You have the father, Stan Delaney, and his wife, Joy Delaney. Those are the two most important characters, some big argument that they had. And I'll tell you now, that's actually Joy Delaney missing that is the big mystery of this novel. Now, of course, just like everything with Liane Moriarty, as it unfolds, you discover that it's much more complicated than just Joy missing. Like you find all of the backstory about why she is missing or what could possibly have happened, and in doing so, you're of course going to discover all sorts of issues with relationships, but just all sorts of little events and things along the way. And you're trying to understand this family, which, by the way, is a family obsessed with tennis. Stan Delaney is an incredibly talented tennis instructor. He was a good tennis player. They're both great tennis players, although never quite good enough to make it professionally, but they're definitely good enough instructors that they have some very capable students that they teach. And of course, there's one in particular that goes on to be an incredibly successful tennis player. However, one of the issues with him is that he dropped them as coaches when just as he was becoming successful, and that is something that's kind of always going on in the background of this story. And it is something that's important because, like I said, tennis is really important to this family. And there's four kids that are in this family, and of course, each of them has their own identity, and they each have their things that they bring to the table. But one thing to note is that they are all really good at tennis, and that actually seems to be one of the big tensions in this family is their relationship with tennis. Some of them were really good at tennis, but they just didn't have enough drive. Some of them were really good at tennis, but they did not want to play it professionally for one reason or another. At least one of the sons goes on to get a scholarship by playing tennis in the United States. However, his father always looked down on people that played tennis for college because he says, you can't both study and do well at a sport. You can only do one or the other. And so, there's just a lot of tensions about the way they interact with tennis. And the fact that tennis was his livelihood means that he is very obsessed with it. And so this is going to be an ongoing tension. It's worth noting that Joy's also very good at tennis. And even though I don't think she was an instructor, she definitely played a big role in the academy that they ran and helping the children to play tennis. And of course, being a big support in taking them to different tournaments. And so that's going to be a big part of what is driving the storyline is her relationship with her husband and the supporting role that she played. Like I said, there's four children. All of them are important. All of them are distinct. Without going into too much detail, although if you read the book, you get plenty of detail. The oldest, her name is Amy. She is considered kind of a problem child. She can't handle long-term relationships. She has never really had much of a job. She was, again, very capable at tennis, but it just was not something that really drew her in. And so her parents feel like they're always bailing her out from one thing or another. It doesn't seem like any of her problems are too dramatic. It's just the fact that she doesn't have stability that her parents would like her to have. The son, Logan, he's the one that I already mentioned, went to the United States so that he could play for, I think it was Stanford that he played for. He kind of washed out of tennis. He really did well at school, and he's going to be the most successful. He's the most financially stable, although he's also the one who is divorced. He and his wife separated, and you'll find out why and some of the issues that come up with that. But he is going to be the one that has actually had the most success outside of tennis, and he does still play tennis. Whether any of the children still play tennis or not is an ongoing issue in the family. There's Troy, who is actually some kind of communications instructor at a community college or something, and he has problems with commitments as well. He's obviously not as successful financially, but he has some stability, and so there's a lot of discussion about that stability in his relationship with his long-term girlfriend. And then there's Brooke. She is the youngest. I think she was considered not necessarily the most talented at tennis, but uh, the most ambitious and the one that tried the hardest. And so you can see a whole lot of friction between her and her siblings about just how much she wanted it. But she is no longer playing tennis much. Instead, she has opened up a clinic. And so you have a good deal of the book dealing with how that clinic is going and exactly what she is trying to do and how her family feels about that clinic as opposed to her having continued in tennis, which, as I've now said a lot of times, is the primary pusher of this novel. So the Delaney family is the heart of this story. There is another character named Savannah. Actually, this story starts out with Savannah showing up at their house. She is a domestic abuse victim, and so the book starts out with Joy and Stan meeting her and providing her a home, and there's a lot of effort at trying to, help her as she's getting on her feet. But as the novel continues, you will see a lot of tension start to rise up between Savannah and the children in particular, and that is a big part of the storyline of this new character and how the family interacts with her as an outsider. That's the heart of the story. Without going into too much detail, I've already told you, Joy missing is going to be the key part of the story. Liane Moriarty has two things I think that are really important for any of her books if you're interested in them. And the first one is knowing how the mystery is being unfolded, whatever's at the heart of the book. Are you finding out with everyone else, or is this a matter of everyone already knows what's going on and it's just you as the reader finding out as everything else is going on or happening, or is this in the aftermath of the big mystery? And the other one is understanding the severity of the actual mystery. You'll, of course, discover all sorts of drama leading you up to the climax of the story, but frequently the climax is the fact that there's not actually a huge mystery. So those are the two big things you need to know. What's the severity of the mystery, and are you finding out with the individuals, or do the point of view characters already know the resolution and you're just there for the ride? In this book, one of the things you're trying to figure out is what is the severity of the mystery. And it's also one where the people in the novel are also discovering with you. That's just something to consider without revealing too much of the plot. So who is this book for? Well, if you're a fan of Liane Moriarty, I think this is a pretty good representation of everything she writes. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's at least solidly in the middle. And like I've said before, I think everything she writes is worth reading. So I would recommend this to almost anybody, especially if you like a good mystery, especially if you like a mystery where it's not just figuring out what happened, but it's a matter of understanding the individuals involved in it and the relationships that they have, especially when it's a close family relationship like this. I think that is a fair description of this that should tell people whether this is something they'd be interested in or not. And if you don't think that is for you, I'd recommend still giving it a try, simply because I didn't know that I liked that type of novel until I started reading Liane Moriarty's books, and I really enjoy them. Who wouldn't I say this is for? I mean, if you are concerned about the fact that at the heart of this is lying and deceit and elements of a dysfunctional family, and of course I mentioned that there is a domestic abuse victim in it, those could be reasons why you may not want to read this, or if you don't like mystery as a whole, then maybe this series isn't for you. But otherwise, I would highly recommend it to almost everyone. A point of information about Liane Moriarty is that she is Australian, and all of her books are technically set in Australia. However, you wouldn't know that. I don't know if it's because I read an Americanized version of them or what, but the dialogue almost never has anything in there that leads me to realize that I'm reading an Australian novel, aside from the occasional mention of Sydney, or sometimes they might say like the lift instead of the elevator, but even that's not very often. I feel like she almost always references big stores that any American would recognize, whether it's Starbucks or Target or Walmart or something like that. Of course, a lot of American technology companies like Apple and Netflix and stuff like that, those tend to be basically your only real references. And so it is by no means hard for anyone to read. She doesn't write in some kind of dialect that might make it hard to understand or anything like that. They're very easy to read in that regard. The only thing is you may have to have a little patience as the mystery unfolds because maybe that's not your thing. I know at least one or two of her novels, as I was reading them, I would text family or friends and I'd just be like, I just want to know what happened. But I also think that that is the sign of a good novel, as long as it's not too long. And this, although I think it is one of her longer novels, again, I found it enjoyable the whole way through. So as a whole, I have to recommend this because I think Liane Moriarty does such an excellent job. But I really would like to know your opinions on it. Please let me know in the comments whether you think this is one of her best books or whether this is a disappointment for her or whether it's her only book that you've read and what you think of Liane Moriarty. Anything about this book I would greatly appreciate. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on the notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.